may now request Mr. Shrikant, her associates, and a great supporter and advisor to the Chamber on, especially on logistics sector, to give a theme address on this conference, please.
Mr. Krishnan, Mrs. Saraswati, and my dear friends. It's a pleasure to be in your midst today. Normally, Chennai is not neutral about anything. Whether it is Rajni or Kamal, we are not neutral about that. Whether it is DMK or AIDMK, whether the IIT joint entrance exam should be in a different format or not, but we certainly rarely stand in the middle. I'm glad that at least in this one matter of carbon neutrality, we are all thinking alike. That's nice to see. I do have some problems with the theme. We'll come to that later. But let's go on to whatever I wish to present. Okay, let me start by talking about road networks. You see, the advent of the automobile led to the development of spectacular roadways and highway systems in many countries. The gentleman in the top left, you may not admire him for many things, but he was indeed responsible, Adolf Hitler was indeed responsible for aggressively expanding the German autobahns to further his military ambitions. Eisenhower in the United States was responsible for this huge and brilliant interstate system in the US. These roadway systems brought previously unknown efficiencies to cargo transportation. In India, we have, believe it or not, the largest road building program in the world. We already have over 3 million kilometers of roads, not in very good condition, as most of us know, but we have an ambitious program of adding to our infrastructure. We have the Golden Quadrilateral, which connects the metros, the north-south, Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai and Bombay. You have the north-south corridor, which links Srinagar and Kanyakumari, the east-west corridor linking Silchar in the east to Porbandar in the west, and so on. The NHDP also talks about roads within the city by assuring port connectivity. These grand road networks have facilitated cargo movement and contributed to unprecedented global economic growth over the last 3 decades, marred only occasionally by financial crises such as the one we are facing today. If you see, we have done in excess of 2 to 3% average GDP growth worldwide ever since 1960 or so. A fact that's not widely appreciated, however, is that trade in general, and hence domestic cargo movement, tend to grow at a faster rate than GDP. The chart that I have put up on the screen, say for example in the year 2005, when you might have had a GDP growth rate of something like 4.5, the trade growth is much closer to 8. So you have the road freight movement growing at a faster rate than GDP itself. So if India is growing at what it used to grow at 8+%, when you're looking at probably and external costs. These are costs associated with every mode of transport. We are all familiar with internal costs. These are costs that are borne wholly by the users of the transport mode. Fuel, you have seen the furore over the last couple of weeks over the petrol price increase, protests all over the country, the opposition calling for a ban and so on. because it's a direct cost. It's a cost that's borne by those who use the road transport mode in one way or other. Other costs, such as the ownership of a vehicle or insurance or maintenance of a vehicle, are also examples of internal costs that are borne directly by the users of the transport mode. Some of these costs could be variable, fuel for example. Others could be fixed, such as depreciation. Excuse me. Yes. Others could be fixed, such as, whether it's depreciation or whether it's insurance. Internal costs have, in the past, been the primary determinant of the cost of haulage. But then, you have costs which are unseen, which are hidden, which are borne not only by the users of the transport mode, but by society at large. The topic of today's conference, climate change, is one such. The emissions from road transport vehicles affect all of us, whether you own a road transport vehicle or not, whether you use one or not. So, but then, this is not the only one. There are other, what we call as external costs. These are accidents, these result from accidents, they result from pollutants other than those which cause climate change, from the burden on infrastructure that are the external costs of road transport are nearly a third of the total cost of road transport. We will see this in more detail in a moment. Coming to climate change, which again seems to be the emphasis of this conference, nearly 12.5% of the greenhouse gases emitted in India are transport emissions. And almost all of this is from road. Nearly 90% is from road transport. So you see how important it is to curtail carbon emissions in road transport if we are to prevent climate change. Just before this program, I was discussing with the guests of honor and the chief guests and others of today, and we were talking about the number of accidents on the roads today. Shivaram told me that his group has a policy that senior management does not travel by road because of the number of accidents. In India, 130,000 people die every year because of accidents, road accidents. A number of others are maimed, and God knows how many other accidents actually take place but are not recorded or reported. Coming to pollution, particulates, nitrous oxides, all of these causing respiratory diseases and even setting the stage for cardiovascular disease. The link between them is now well established. Noise pollution by trucks reaches unacceptable levels. Very often it's over 100 decibels. And we have become so immune to this that we don't realize that it could cause hearing damage, it could cause even hypertension. Then again, congestion. Road congestion is more than a mere irritant. It leads to increased fuel consumption, increased transit time. I'm sure even as Mr. Ramachandran would have been a victim of congestion as he drove here today to this venue. Nobody is exempt. Highway congestion cost the US no less than $78 billion in 2007, resulting from some 3 billion gallons of wasted fuel and over 4 million hours in lost time. Imagine what it could be in our country. The burden on infrastructure, the cost of land acquisition has now spiraled. Highways cost over 20 crores per kilometer. Widening a road within the city is incredibly expensive. The price for a pound of land runs into crores, and when you have to acquire land to expand a road, that's certainly not cheap. These are all costs which are imposed on all of us by road transport. And the costs are huge, they're enormous. Somebody, or rather everybody, pays for these costs, not just those who use road transport. That was the bad news. The good news is that rail and water transport impose far lower external costs than road transport. This is a study from the EU, a bit dated, it's about 10 years old, but it compares the external costs of various transport modes. You will find that in this study, in the EU, the total external costs of road transport were 5 times that of inland water transport or even coastal shipping or short sea shipping as they call it. Rail is somewhere in between at about 10 plus euro, about 12 euro against the 25 euro imposed by road. So therein lies the great opportunity. We need to shift more of our freight and indeed passenger travel too where possible to both rail and water. The modal share of freight transport in the EU and in the US is such that a lot more use is made of water transport than in India. In India, road transport accounts for the lion's share of nearly 57-58%, as against something like 45% of the total freight movement on a per ton kilometer basis in the EU and something like 36% in the US. When it comes to water transport, we use barely 7%. That's our inland waterway and our coastal shipping combined, as against a very healthy 40+% in the EU. And of course, in the US, it is not as good, but still a lot better than India at something like 16%. So there is enormous potential to increase the use of our waterways and indeed to add rail to our modal cargo mix. Let's look at the waterways that Chennai City, just Chennai City has. We have 3 rivers, 3 water bodies. We have the Kuam, we have the Buckingham Canal, and we have the Ariya River. Each of these has significant stretches running within the city itself, 40 kilometers or so, or 30 kilometers or so, I don't remember the exact amount. For the Kuam, the Ariya River runs for over 20 kilometers in the Chennai metropolitan area. The Buckingham Canal, 30 kilometers in Chennai City. And if you look at this map carefully, I don't have a pointer with me, you will see that the Buckingham Canal runs within a kilometer of the Chennai Port Trust. We are talking about connectivity to ports. What better connectivity could you have than by water? But how are we treating these water bodies? Take a look. The MRTS has driven a spike into the heart of the Buckingham Canal, making it unusable. I do not know whether this was a deliberate, unknowing blunder or a knowing blunder, but it's incredible that we should destroy our water bodies in this manner and leave ourselves with so little breathing room to utilize a God-given resource. From the port of Chennai, you see the container trucks waiting there. That's because evacuation of containers or ingress of containers is almost entirely by road. A small percentage is by rail and none at all by water. I saw in the program that you have the representative of the Port of Antwerp talking this afternoon. I hope he will tell you more about Antwerp, how they use the waterways to evacuate the cargo. So, my dear friends, it is clear that we need to divert freight from road to rail and to waterways, because that would help the total cost of movement and promote sustainable development. Now that may not be good news to Mr. Sumantran, because we may be buying fewer trucks. So I hope that he will spare me when I go back to my seat next time. But yes, sustainable development, which I understand our former President Abdul Kalam was actually talking about sustainable development in Chennai a few months ago, and you have the good fortune of being able to hear him this afternoon. So to promote sustainable development, we need to divert freight from the roads to rail, and if possible to the waterways. 2 points emerge though. Carbon neutrality cannot be our primary goal when we talk about freight movement. And the reduction of total external costs, that would be the primary goal. Second, when we talk about integration of freight transport, we should consider migration of freight from road to rail or water, and the integration of all three modes of transport. I will leave you with just two examples. Some people find it difficult to understand what integration is all about. Here's some work that I have done showing how we could use coastal shipping for a north-south movement in India, which would otherwise take place by road alone. We would use, on one of the land legs, road, on other land leg we would use rail, and of course the sea leg is there. The overall cost of this movement could actually be lower than the cost of unimodal road. Similarly, on the right side, you see using inland waterways. I will not elaborate on this because there are other speakers ahead of me. But you cannot integrate transport modes unless you look into various other considerations, and that ensure frequency of services, the reliability of services, and extremely important, the door-to-door availability of multimodal services. You need to seamlessly integrate these transport modes. And of course, the total transit time cannot be vastly in excess of just road transport. Well, these two examples of how other countries or other areas are tackling modal shift. The Marco Polo program of the European Union, which runs, Marco Polo 2 runs from 2007 to 2013. It seeks to divert cargo from road to both rail and waterways. It supports innovative ways of funding for lifting barriers for intermodal transportation. It promotes door-to-door transportation and, interestingly enough, traffic avoidance. How can you prevent movement or reduce movement of cargo altogether? The reproduction of demand. The European Union estimates that here they intend to shift freight from road to water only. There is no attempt to shift it to rail. And the Maritime Highways Program defines trade routes for support, designates the water legs as marine highways, and so on. So, my dear friends, I will leave you with just this thought. India, not just Chennai, that would be too narrow a focus, needs a comprehensive transport policy to optimally integrate road, rail, and water transport. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Srikanth. You have almost preempted the program, including hinting at what should be the way forward. Thanks for that. We will now have the pleasure of listening to Dr. V. Sumantran. As Mr. Shivaraman welcome address mentioned, when we talk about Chennai, we immediately think about the Chennai as an automotive hub, and immediately the first thing that comes to our mind is Ashok Leyland. They have not only had their facilities, they have also brought in a lot of collaborations, and it's a very progressive moving company. And we have Dr. V. Sumantran with us today. We are very fortunate to have him here. Dr. Sumantran is the Executive Vice Chairman of Hinduja Automotive Limited UK and Vice Chairman of Ashok Leyland. He is also the Chairman of Defence Technologies and Ashok Leyland Defence Systems, as well as Ashok Leyland's joint ventures with Nissan and John Deere. Dr. Sumantran is on the Scientific Advisory Committee to the Cabinet and has served in the Science Advisory Council of the Prime Minister of India. He is a member of the National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council. He is also a distinguished visiting professor at the IIT Chennai. He is on the Group Advisory Council of GMR Group, one of India's largest infrastructure groups. Dr. Sumantran holds a doctorate degree in aerospace engineering and a master's degree in management of technology. He is a fellow of the Society of Automotive Engineers and a fellow of the Indian National Academy for Engineers. He is also a recipient of Distinguished Alumni Award from IIT Madras. We are now eager to listen to Dr. V. Sumantran, and we request him to deliver his special address.
Sri Ramachandran, Secretary Government of Tamil Nadu, my good friend Shivaraman, Mr. Srikanth, Mr. Krishna, Ms. Saraswati, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with all of you today on this very interesting subject. I must first start by saying it was an excellent presentation from Mr. Srikanth. I, however, certainly feel no threat from waterborne transport, unless I'm a generation that grew up with the Beatles, and if I were Ringo Starr, who sang about loving to live under the sea within an octopus's garden, I would love to have water transport. But for all the rest of us who live on land, I think I'm on solid ground when I state that I believe there's a firm future in road transport. Being one who was born in Chennai and can have ancestry traced back several generations to Chennai, I can still recall stories of my great-grandfather who apparently practically lived on the Buckingham Canal, going across the entire range between what used to be the province of Andhra Pradesh and Madras Presidency, looking at water allocation to farmland and looking at freight movement in some sort of a supervisory role. Certainly going further back in history, the history of this piece of the country are extensive trade activities with so much of the realization that Chennai was a very vibrant trading region, not just now, but going back literally 2 centuries. More recently, while I still would be cautious about adopting the label of Detroit of the East, certainly I do believe Chennai has a very strong claim to being at least a Detroit of India. And we have here in this ecosystem a phenomenal confluence of manufacturing industry, ICT industry, software professionals, a very large population of engineering institutions, engineering colleges, and a large number of young, highly educated population, all of which must make for a very vibrant trading, commerce, and industrial-oriented society. Indeed, when I talk to some of our collaboration partners, as was mentioned, we have a joint venture with Nissan, and not only Ashok Leyland ourselves, but also in our joint venture with Nissan as well as John Deere, we've been making a lot of investments, specifically in the Chennai area. And these have all been predicated on the confidence that this is a region that has a very good industrial infrastructure and an industrial base. It has a highly educated population, and it has very good logistics. These are 3 very important factors that continually lead us to believe that investment in the Chennai area is indeed strategic. Just last month, the government of Tamil Nadu further demonstrated this by announcing 4 large projects, 2 for commercial vehicles, one of which was one of our projects for an ultra-mega investment, and 2 two-wheeler investments in the state. So I think the validation of the concept that Chennai remains an important location for investment and its ability to attract investment because of these 3 factors, industrial foundations, educated population, and logistics potential, are important. However, we will all agree that there is a lot to be done to further establish these advantages in each of these areas. And in this conference at the MIT, the famous MIT of Boston, has a logistics school in Europe, in Spain. And we were talking